Recently I had seen this knife trending on YouTube and I started to question how good was this knife that a lot of people were talking about it. Some people are saying this knife is too good for the price that it's flying off the shelves at Walmart. And indeed, that was the case because when I checked my local Walmarts, which I have 4 near me, only one of them had them in stock and they only had 2 knives left, with over 200 plus individuals with this knife in their cart. So at any moment, those 2 knives could have been purchased and I would have been left scavenging around looking to see when would they get more in stock, or I would have had to order it online and just wait to see when they would come in. So for my own sanity, I went ahead and I bought one before midnight. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sleep thinking I missed my chance. So anyways, I received it the following day around 7 p.m. When I checked the website again, it showed out of stock already. So good thing I bought one the night before. So here we are with the knife in hand, and I'm ready to go over its specs and put it to the test to see just how good this Ozark D2 knife is. We'll check to see how good it holds its sharpness, and we'll see if it bends easily or not. We'll also go over a few pros and cons, plus we'll also provide a star rating at the end. The price of the Ozark D2 knife is currently running it for $9.97. The size of the blade is 3.25 inches in length, 15/16 of an inch in height, and between 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch in width. The size of the handle is 4.25 inches in length, about 1 inch in height, and about 1/2 inch in width. When opened, the knife measures about 7.5 inches in length. The knife is made of D2 high carbon steel blade, which is a tougher and more durable steel that can hold its edge much longer. So you don't have to sharpen it as often as with other soft steel blades. However, because it's a tougher steel, it would just be a bit more challenging to sharpen. But regardless, it is still a great steel. Now this has an injection handle which feels a little cheap, a little plasticky, but it's still not so bad. You're still able to get a good grip of it. Plus, it's understandable that they were trying to save some money by using a more inexpensive option for the handle to put the money on the steel blade instead. You can always swap out the handles or get some custom made ones if you'd prefer. I honestly thought that the handle was going to be a brighter orange, just how it looks online, but once it came in, I noticed that it was a bit dull, but that's okay. It's still easy to spot the knife if you drop it around in the grass or camping, or if you put it in a toolbox. The color still helps it stick out. Now you get a belt clip or a pocket clip, and it's positioned to where you're able to pull out the knife and easily open it up. You get a slight lock to easy to close and also open your knife. This swings open and closed pretty good. We'll see if it's able to function just as good once we finish testing it out. You get a thumb stud on both sides of the blade, so you can open it from either side. Now let's go ahead and put it to the test. First, we'll check to see how good it holds its sharpness. So right out of the box, this knife is able to cut through paper without much of a problem. It can easily cut through plastic as well. The knife is sharp enough that it can chip off pieces of wood from this 2x4 pretty easily. We'll run the knife several times across the 2x4 to try to see if it dulls the knife or not. Now let's cut some branches. Even though I had already passed the knife on the 2x4, this is still cutting through branches fairly well. Some cheap steel usually dulls pretty quick as soon as you start to use it, but this shows that the knife is holding an edge pretty good. It's still able to cut through rope without a problem. And now let's run the paper test again, and you can see that the blade is still able to cut through the paper. That is actually impressive. Now let's see how the tip of the blade holds up. This easily goes through a plastic bottle. As we drop the knife onto a 2x4, this goes through it as well without a problem. Now let's really put that tip to the test and see if it bends or not by doing a little bit of knife throwing. Now I'm no professional knife thrower, and I'll be the first to admit that. I'm pretty bad at it. But in this case, it's a good thing when I miss having the knife puncture the tree, because I'm also putting the handles to the test to see if beating them up onto the tree will break them or not. So let's see how the handles hold up after the test as well. So the tip of the knife is still pretty straight, but you can see a little wear and tear on it. The handles, well, they held up too. Sure, it got scratched up, but I was throwing this knife with force. At least they didn't break off. So if you drop it to the floor, the handles shouldn't break easily. They'll probably just get scratched up a little. So good job on the handles holding up. After throwing the knife, chopping some branches, cutting pieces of 2x4s, the knife is still holding up pretty good. Last test after all the beating on it is the quick bend test to see how it holds up. If you bend it hard enough, you can definitely break it, but even other knives that cost more than $10 have that problem as well. So this knife is holding up pretty good, and it's still able to open and close without much of a problem. Yes, it bends a little, but it's still holding up. I do see a little wear and tear on the blade after the testing, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be. So the blade did hold up pretty good in my opinion, and it is still cutting through paper. So here are a few pros and cons of this knife. Pros: it's affordable. $10 is not bad at all. If you lose it, it's not breaking the bank. Number 2, it's durable. You can beat it up and it still works well. Worst case scenario, if you break it, you can get one for $10. Number 3, it's got a very nice design to it. I really enjoy the way it looks. Number 4, it swings open and closes smoothly. Even after the beating up, it still works just fine. And number 5, the blade holds up pretty well. I'm impressed by the blade, so definitely worth the money. Now let's take a look at the cons. And in this case, I only have one con. And that is that Walmart runs out of this knife pretty quick, so get one as soon as possible. That's the only con I have. So I give this knife a 4.5 out of 5-star rating. The reason I give it a 4.5 is just because of the handles. They still feel a little plasticky, but hey, what do you expect for $10? So let me know if you agree with my thoughts about this knife. Do you agree with my star rating? Do you have one of these knives? And if you do, what do you rate it? And what do you think of it? Let me know in the comment section. Today we're looking at the SOG Traction Folding Knife to see just how good it is. Can this knife that cost $10.48 really be worth that price? That's what we'll find out today. We'll be doing a few tests to see just how good and reliable it is. We'll also go over pros and cons, plus we'll provide a star rating at the end. The SOG Traction Folding Knife usually runs online on Amazon around $18 to $27 US. My local academy had it for $20.97, but since it was in a clearance section, this was marked all the way down to $10.48. So I just couldn't pass up on the opportunity to grab it. But could it be that there is a reason for it to be marked down that low? Let's try to find out. The SOG Traction measures 7 7/8 of an inch when open. The blade itself measures about 3.5 inches in length, 1 inch in height, and a little less than 1/8 of an inch in width. This weighs 2.3 ounces. So this is a lightweight knife. The blade is made of 5CR15 MOV steel, which is similar to 420HC. This has a lockback locking mechanism. The textured handle is made of glass reinforced nylon, which doesn't feel like the best material, but it helps to keep the weight down. This also has a low carry pocket clip with the SOG letters on it. So because it's a low carry clip, you can't really see the knife when it's in your pocket. This hides it pretty well. You also get a thumb stud on both sides of the blade, so you can open from either side. I will say though, that you can't really flip it open so easily. You'll really have to use your thumb to guide it open the entire way up. But it's still a great knife, especially if you're able to find it for a great discounted price. The knife looks really nice, but I doubt it'll still look this good after the test will run on it. The first test is to see if this is sharp right out of the package. Now this does have a sharp blade out of the box. You can see that this cuts paper well enough, but the real question is, can it hold its edge after some real use? So for the second test, we'll cut some branches. The reason I do a test on cutting branches is because sometimes when I need to cut a branch and I don't want to go into the garage to get a machete or some loppers, I'll use my knife. So far, this knife gets the job done and is still holding its edge. For the third test, we'll run the blade multiple times on a 2x4. Now the reason I run it on a 2x4 is because sometimes you can be chopping wire or paper or other items on a wood table or board where the knife comes in contact with the wood beneath. Now let's go ahead and chip some pieces of wood from the 2x4. The knife is sharp enough that it can chip off pieces from the 2x4 pretty easily.
I'm actually quite impressed. After running it through the 2x4 multiple times, cutting some branches, and also chipping off pieces of 2x4, this still cuts through paper fairly well. Almost as good as the first time. You can feel that it's starting to slightly dull, but minimal. It's actually holding its sharpness pretty well.
Now we'll test the tip of the knife. Can it puncture through a plastic bottle? Yes, it can without a problem. Now, can it puncture through a 2x4 and stay on an upward position? Yes, it can do that as well. So the knife tip is quite sharp and pointy. Now let's really put that tip to the test to see if it bends or not by doing a few extra tests. Let's first remove some staples from some wood.
So the staple here I'm trying to remove is actually quite deep. I mean, that thing goes in over an inch, I believe. Or at least an inch. So it's kind of hard to actually take it out with this knife. But you can see where the knife starts to bend. However, it comes back to its form, to its original form, original shape. It doesn't bend so easily. Now, I'm not putting too much stress on it, too much pressure on it to break it. Obviously not. I mean, you probably don't want to do that to it, right? Because eventually it will break or it will bend, but I am putting enough pressure to it where it should have bended already, but it comes back to its original shape. I'm not saying it's gonna come back entirely if you bend it even more. I'm not saying it's not gonna come back to its original shape if you go crazy on it and bend it or really put a lot of stress, a lot of force on it. But obviously, if you like to take care of your knives, take care of your tools, you're not gonna put it to a point where you know it's not gonna be able to do the job. You're not gonna push its limits. At that point, obviously, you'll get a pry bar or something else. But as you can see, I just flipped it and I was still able to pull out this staple.
Now let's drop it a few times on the concrete floor to see if the tip bends or breaks.
Well, the knife sure didn't enjoy being dropped on its tip. You can see that it bent pretty bad, but at least it didn't break. So I could probably try to straighten it out. Hopefully it won't break. But yeah, it definitely didn't enjoy being dropped on its tip on some concrete. The good part is that it's straight again. The bad part is that it's straight because I broke off the tip by accident while I was trying to straighten it out. Now, if we look at the bright side of the tip that broke off, at least now you have a micro flathead screwdriver. Now, the knife also doesn't have much wear and tear. I mean, yes, it went slightly dull, but I can't really see much wear and tear on it.
Now let's drop the knife a few more times to see how the handle holds up. Let's see if it scratches, dents, or breaks. The handle held up well too. Sure, it got scratched up, but I was dropping it from pretty high as well. At least they didn't break off. So if you drop it to the floor, the handle shouldn't break easily. They'll probably just get scratched up. So good job on the handles. After dropping the knife, chopping some branches, cutting pieces of 2x4, the knife is still holding up pretty good, but you can see some wear and tear on the blade and the handle. So here are a few pros and cons of this knife. For the pros, it's affordable even if you can't get it for $10.48 like I did. Getting it anywhere between 18 to 27 US dollars is still a reasonable price for a knife like this. It's durable, you can beat it up, and it still works well. Worst case scenario, if you break it, you can still get one for a reasonable price. Now, it's also got a very nice design to it. That's another pro. And the final pro is that it's comfortable to carry. It's not bulky at all. Now let's go over the cons. The only con I have is the thumb stud, that you can't really flip it open so easily. You'll really have to use your thumb to guide it open the entire way up. That is the only con I have, which may not even be considered a con to most of you. Now, from a 1 to 5 star rating, I give this knife a 4.5 stars. The reason I give it a 4.5 is just because I can't really flip it open so easily. Plus, the handles, for me, they feel a little bit cheap. But then again, it comes back to affordability when it comes to the handles. You can't expect it to have premium handles for that price. But let me know if you agree with my thoughts about this knife. Do you agree with my star rating? Do you have one of these knives? And if you do, what do you rate it? And what do you think of it? That is all I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.